We're taking a look at Duke's 2025 depth chart, and I'm going to give my thoughts on how I think the offense is, how I think the defense is, and then we're going to finish this video up with a record prediction where we're going to go through every game, and I'm going to just talk very briefly about how I think Duke's going to do against every team they play this upcoming season. We're going to start with this offense, and we're going to start with Darian Mensah. We're going to talk about Darian Mensah being one of the best quarterback portal additions that you could possibly make, and my defense of that statement is because usually when you bring in a superstar type quarterback, we're talking about a guy that's either one and done or maybe two and done. And, Cam Ward coming to Miami from Oregon State by way of Incarnate Word, Dylan Gabriel, I guess he transferred around, but Darian Mensah is a guy that Duke can feel good about in 2025, and then they can feel good about him going forward. Now, that being said, I do think there's going to be a point in time down the line where the NFL is just too attractive for Mensah to say no, whether that's after this season or 2026 or 2027, that's conjecture. For now, I think as a Duke fan, you can feel good about this dude being behind your center this upcoming season and then maybe a year or two after. But what does Mensah bring to the table? Very good athlete. I know Malik Murphy was a great athlete last year for Duke, just a bit inconsistent with some of the downfield throws. I think you're going to get a whole lot more consistency out of Darian Mensah. Really like the touch this dude throws with downfield. Certainly has a good arm, but knows when to take some off. Very accurate downfield, I think. So I feel good about Mensah. I feel even better about this offensive line. Just to note on some of the formatting stuff, all the asterisks are going to be returning starters. So you can see you got four out of 5 offensive linemen returning for Duke starters. This is information I got from the website. So if it's wrong, it's on the Duke's media department. But according to them, Fina, Craycraft, Pickett, Parker all started last year for Duke. Significant amount of games. So that's very exciting. A lot of times with the offensive line, we're going to be talking about the importance of experience over talent. And I think the fact that you have 4 guys that have played a whole lot together is going to really elevate each and every one. And then whoever they have to plug in to play that last game. And they could even suffer an injury or two and still be all right up front. So I really like what they have up front. Really like the quarterback as well. The running backs are a bit more of a question mark. I think Jaquez Moore looked pretty productive before last season where he got his foot a little banged up. So going to have to see how he recovers from that. Peyton Jones, younger running back, like what he brings. Really like his frame. I think 6 foot, 195, maybe even 205. They had him listed. Really solid one cut. I think he's explosive and it's just really sudden in the open field with him. Talking about these receivers now, Andrew Anthony is the guy that's coming over from Oklahoma. Like him as a field stretcher, 6'1". We're going to like his 40 time, like his ball tracking downfield. Now, Cooper Barkate, Duke's in a very interesting position that a lot of other schools across America aren't in, and it's because of the academics. They can almost start treating that with the transfer portal now. They can start treating the Ivy League almost like, Duke's AAA team or AA team, just because they have such a leg up recruiting these kind of kids like Barkate, who coming over from Harvard, obviously has, obviously cares about the academics. That's such a leg up Duke has over against, other football schools that traditionally would have a leg up in recruiting just because of, I'm going to call a spade here. Duke historically doesn't have a very rich football tradition. But obviously one of the more respected academic institutions in America really puts a leg up for some of these Ivy League schools. And I think Cooper Barkate's a difference maker on the offensive side of the ball. And we're going to talk about another dude on the defensive side of the ball later coming over from the Ivy League. Anyways, Barkate, 6'2". I think this dude's going to end up leading Duke in receiving yards in 2025. Really like this dude as a route runner and like his frame as well. I was pretty surprised to see that he's actually 6'2" because he does not move like it. Moves a bit more like a slot receiver. Really strong hands away from the body. Just the receiver's receiver. I really like Barkate, and I think this is a guy with an NFL future at some point down the line. Talking about the slot receiver, Quayshawn Brown. Hasn't played a whole lot of offense, but was an all-ACC honorable mention as a return man. So 5'8", going to be very undersized, but really like his ability as a gadget player already. Get the ball in his hands, let him do something. Going to be interesting to see how he kind of evolves that athletic ability around his evolves his receiver game around that athletic ability, because certainly has upside, just going to be tough at his size. Now, moving to the other side of the ball, obviously me being a college football fan, I know who Manny Diaz is. I know he's a big defensive guy, but I can't believe how quick this defense is already at an elite level. I know Manny Diaz. I know how talented he is. I know how good of a defensive coach he is, defensive coordinator. But I can't believe the level of talent Duke already has on this side of the ball. We're going to be talking about 3 levels of guys with NFL futures, to be completely honest. So starting it up front, Vincent Anthony. I think he's listed at 6'6". Really like this guy as an edge setter. Really strong, really long. Just a guy that's going to cause a lot of trouble for the offensive line in the run game. I think his NFL upside is him a bit more as a physical specimen than it is as a pass rusher. But at the college level, had 5.5 sacks last year. Certainly competent in that level. Aaron Hall couldn't find that much film on him, but I think he was an All-ACC honorable mention last year. Team captain as well. Big name coming back in the middle of that defensive line. Now, Josiah Green's coming over from Dartmouth. I really like this dude. I couldn't believe how good of football players both him and the receiver Cooper Barkade are, just because you flip on the Ivy League school and you're just expecting, okay, they're just taking advantage of bad competition. These kids were playing their ass off, man. Josiah Green, 6'1", 295, bit on the smaller end, but really like what he brings as a pass rusher. Really good first step, just very explosive. Another guy, I think he does have NFL upside just because of how valued that pass rush ability is from the inside, but certainly has the cards against him frame-wise, but I think he's certainly quick enough to kind of mitigate that for his NFL future. Wesley Williams, kind of a similar player, although he's a different position. I think he's listed at 6'3". I think he's a lot longer than he's listed. Maybe he's only 6'3", but I definitely think his arm length more than compensates, the 6'3" number that we're going to be getting. Like this dude is a pass rusher more than Vincent Anthony. Wesley Williams going to be a bit more undersized than him, but really good first step. Really like the way this dude turns the corner. Very flexible. I think he had something like 7.5 sacks, and it might have even been more in 2024. So, like this, Wesley Williams, I think, is the one on this defensive line that's going to have the highest draft ability going down the line. But for this upcoming season, they're absolutely loaded up front on the side of the ball. Yeah. And then moving on to the linebackers, if we're going to talk about a weakness on the defense, it's probably this, but even then, it's not really a weakness. Trey Freeman, 2-time All-ACC honorable mention, I believe. Really productive college career, and, that's massive getting that dude back. Nick Morris hasn't played that much. Jaden Francois coming over from Utah State had something like 13 starts over there playing that nickelback position. Going to be interesting to see how they kind of mesh into this defense, but, I got to tell you, they can be wrong this season just because they have a lot of guys in front of them and a lot of guys behind them that are going to make them right. Moving on to the defensive back room, Terry Moore, Chandler Rivers, 2 guys that were, I think, second-team All-Americans last year, both NFL careers. Chandler Rivers, man, we might be talking about this dude in the second round, first round. Really like his hips, really like how explosive he is. At only 5'10", another guy a bit undersized, but like his athletic upside. Terry Moore, another guy, just a ball hawk. Really like how filled out Terry Moore is as well. Kamari Robinson, Deshaun Stone, 2 guys haven't played a whole lot. Going to be interested to see how they play this upcoming season. But yeah, this defense is absolutely loaded. Credit to Manny Diaz. Only been here for a year. It's kind of hard to believe that this is only going to be his second season in Durham, but already at a very good level on this defensive side of the ball. It's going to keep Duke in a lot of games that I think traditionally you'd say they'd have no business being in. So going to look at their 2025 record prediction here. I got them at 10-2. Elon's going to be a blowout win. I think they opened up with them last year as well. Illinois, now this is one I might watch Illinois, and I might turn this one into a toss-up because I haven't watched them yet. But as of right now, this defense is so good. If this was in Champaign, different story, but in Durham, I like Duke for now. At Tulane, Darian Mensa revenge game. Another team that could be sneaky good, but take a look at them later. Got Duke winning that one. NC State still have to watch them. Now, at Cuse is the toss-up game that I have on this schedule for Duke this upcoming season. I think Syracuse is in kind of a similar spot that Duke is in. 2 traditional ACC basketball powerhouses with kind of, nascent football potential, we'll say. Going to be interesting to see how these two schools are going forward. I think this is one that if it was in Durham, I would give it to Duke for now, but because it's in Syracuse, I'm going to give this one to the Orange. Another one could go either way. Going to be very excited for that game. Illinois and Syracuse are going to be 2 very good college football games early in the season. Got them going out to Cal, beating them by a week. Georgia Tech could be a close game, but I got Duke over them for now. So now this going to Death Valley at Clemson, I'm not there yet. I'm not there where I'm going to say, oh, Duke's going to pull the upset. But I will tell you one thing Duke has going for them is that they have a bye week 9. at Georgia Tech week 8, by week 7. So it's nice that you're going to be refreshed. You have one game in 3 weeks going into that Clemson game. I just think Clemson's a bit further along as a program. The fact that we're even talking about Duke being in this game in 2025, is a credit to what Manny Diaz has been so far. But we'll see how Duke is at that point in the season. There's a shot that they're undefeated really going into that game. That would be an awesome game. Might be talking about College Game Day at that point, but that's way down the line. Got that as a close loss for them for now. Then at UConn, I think they played them last year as well. Got them no trouble with them. No trouble with UVA. I think Duke's going to be a lot better than UNC and Wake this upcoming season, but I got them both as close wins for now, just because, all bets are off with the rivalry game. So I think 10-2 is a very good spot for Duke to be at. Manny Diaz has already shown some potential throughout his career. I think he's a great football coach. But as far as Duke's concerned, really good season last year for Duke. Now going into this upcoming season, I think they have a pretty easy schedule, to be completely honest. They're missing SMU. They're missing some, Miami could be pretty good. If Clemson's the best team on your schedule, Clemson's a hell of a football team, don't get me wrong, but I think for the most part, I think Duke could have a really good season this upcoming year. Well, you guys let me know what you think about Duke this upcoming season. Any prospects, any commits, feel free. Maybe Duke commits. I haven't watched that much on here, but definitely open to it. Thanks for watching.